Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. What a day it has been for the sport of hockey, especially for the Montreal Canadiens. Wow. Um, yeah. So, welcome to another episode of a special midweek episode of Shooting the Shit. I'm your host Landsman. I'm with my boy, my bearded buddy Z. How's it going over there?
Good man, how are you?
I
Not
mean,
getting a lot of work done today.
No, you know what? I'm not gonna lie. I mean, I got home from work. I was getting ready to sleep and all comfortable, just before 9 in the morning, and then the floodgates opened, and holy crap! How did you find out?
I was, busy working in the morning and just saw a couple notifications pop up on my phone, and it actually wasn't related to the coaching change. But while I had my phone in my hand, I just jumped on Twitter, and it was the top tweet, Montreal Canadiens, and it had the blue check mark because I read it quickly. And then I was like, when you read something on Twitter, you're always like, wait a second, who tweeted this? Is it like the Montreal Canadiens? Like,
Mm-hmm.
but no, just sure enough, there was a blue check mark, and I get it wasn't necessarily a surprise because we had talked about it, and if you're on Twitter, even if you lived under a rock the last 2 weeks as a Habs fan, you kind of knew that Julien was on the hot seat. So I guess it doesn't come as a surprise, but then when it happens, you're still surprised. You're still kind of shocked by the timing and whatnot. And but I don't think it was like a quick decision or a recent decision. But yeah, that's how I found out.
I mean, ladies and gentlemen, to all the people listening, if you guys are not sure what we're talking about, which surprised me to be honest, but this morning at around just before 9 a.m. Eastern time, Montreal Canadiens relieved their head coach Claude Julien, who's been there for several years, and assistant head coach Kirk Muller of their duties, naming interim head coach Dominique Ducharme and bringing in Alex Burrows, who's currently been with the Laval Rocket of the American Hockey League, to join the team as part of the coaching staff. So now the coaching staff is going to look like interim head coach Ducharme, assistant head coach of Burrows, as well as assistant head coach Luke Richardson. I mean, it's like you said, it was something that was brewing for a long time, and unfortunately, the Habs' consistency just took a dive, and that ultimately led to their dismissal this morning. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, you know, before the week started, I sort of I think I tweeted or I Facebook or something, but I said, they lost to the Leafs on Saturday, and it was another game that follows the exact same Habs game script from the last 4 years since Julian took over. I mean, we can review his career in a second, but certainly over the last year and a half, the Canadians are a very good team, one of the best teams in the league at 5-on-5. And I mean, the numbers bear that out. This is not a topic for discussion. It's just by the numbers, they're one of the best teams 5-on-5 in the league. Where they've struggled is on special teams, and their goaltending has torpedoed them, which is something that's kind of taboo to talk about in Montreal because it's almost blasphemy to criticize Carrie Price, but it's now become to the point where it's sort of becoming accepted because hasn't played well in the last few years. So, and I'll touch on that in a second as well. But the game against Toronto, the Habs outscored Toronto 5-on-5. I think they outscored them. It was 5-3. I think they outscored them 3-2.
Yep.
And their expected goals for percentage is typically higher than any other team 5-on-5 when they play. But they gave up They went 3 for 3 power play on the power play Toronto. Following night against Ottawa, they couldn't score on their power plays. Last night, Ottawa scores 2 power play goals. Montreal doesn't score on their power plays. Montreal's outscored Ottawa 4-2 yesterday at even strength. Again, it's the same script. It's the same script as last year. It's the same script as the year before. And I think this is unfortunately it was a hallmark of the Julien era in Montreal that he did. His system is very, very conducive to 5-on-5. And I'll go into some of the history with the Bruins, but I don't think it certainly wasn't an overnight decision. And based on some rumors, apparently this was in the works. So, I mean, I don't know how you felt about it. I like Julien. I think he's a good coach. I think there's aspects of the game that have passed him by. Muller, who was in charge of special teams, that's if he was in charge of special teams, I would have fired him 2 years ago. That's really what his role is. If I don't perform, I'd get fired. If you don't perform at your job, you get fired. So, I mean, I feel bad for them. By all accounts, Julien is an A+ human, an A+ guy. And I hope that he takes some time off because he went from coaching the Bruins to 1 week later coaching the Habs. And those are not two easy markets to coach in. So, I know he had the hard thing last year. I hope he takes some time off. I hope he recharges battery. And I wish him all the best. But I think that it was time for a change. It was clear.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna exactly 100% agree with you. So that's safe. Yeah, I mean, he's a guy who has coached some top teams of the league. He led Boston to the Cup in 2011. He's a coach who was ranked amongst the top, like I'm saying, top 5 in the coaching history, and the likes of Bowman and Quenneville. He's in that category because of how much he's coached and how much of a winning percentage he has and the caliber. Unfortunately, though, of late with the Canadian special teams, like you said, we haven't seen it. We know that like 5-on-5, they're good, they're solid, they have the lineups. But when it comes to special teams, unfortunately, I talked about this with a colleague of mine last night. You can agree or disagree with me, and so can everyone else, by the way. But like when we get a power play specialist in the late of Shea Weber, don't get me wrong, he is a power play specialist. The thing is, when he is your power play specialist and the only person that you really depend on, like you will cycle the puck in the zone, and then you'll ultimately land with a Shea Weber slap shot.
Yeah,
that's what it is. And like, unfortunately, that system has become so predictable that the other teams know what to expect. Whether the goalie prepares himself, the defense tries to block a shot, which sorry to their pain of their legs afterwards. But when you have other teams who have a balanced system in terms of, if you look at the Washington Capitals with their system, where Obi's going to be when it's a power play. In Tampa Bay where Stamkos is going to be. You also know where Weber's going to be. But the other two teams that are listed have other players that they'll cycle the puck to find that loose puck. In Tampa Bay, and I mean, I'm not the Tampa Bay person who's watching every game. I'm not at the arena. I'm not Emily. But that he's in the slot. And if he doesn't get in the slot, he'll just cross-crease it to Kucherov. And if Kucherov doesn't get it, right in front of the net is Braden Point. And if Braden Point doesn't have it, you go to the backhand and Victor Hedman's there.
Right.
You have the system. Montreal does not, unfortunately. They have Gallagher in front of the net, who, if he touches the puck anywhere near the goalie's blue crease, it's a no goal. Let's go look at last night. Last night.
Yeah, that's another topic. But to just focus on what you were saying about the Julien and his system, I think you can apply a lot of what you said to the penalty kill too. The penalty kill, it's the same system. The way that they rotate on the penalty kill in the box they play, they give up a lot of cross ice passes, right? East-west. And that's how you score on a goalie. Like most NHL goalies, even the ones who are, considered not as good, if you're facing them one-on-one with a shot from 15, 20, 30 feet out, the odds are they're going to make the save. That's why save percentages are 90+% and shooting percentages are 10% and less. Like it always favors the goalie. So the way to score is to go east-west, and you see those teams do it really well. Toronto's another one, Boston's another.
For sure.
So I think special teams is a really good example of one of the critical failures of Julien, which is his inability to adjust. Not even in game. He can't even adjust game to game. He's so loyal. It appears to be that he's so loyal and he's so dedicated to his system because of, and he has had lots of success with it. So I understand maybe from a psychological point where he's coming from, but the NHL has changed. It really has. The last 5 years, it has changed. And it's such a great example of the fact that anyone who says Julien is an adaptable coach, he has never changed his power play. He's never changed his penalty kill. He doesn't really change the strategy 5-on-5. And 5-on-5, he's been good. So maybe don't change that strategy. But I'm messing around on my phone here while you were talking because, the Habs, over his tenure with the Habs had the 26th ranked power play and the 29th ranked penalty kill. There's only 31 teams.
Yeah, that speaks volumes.
So it's just, now listen, I think, you were talking about Tampa Bay. You just mentioned Kucherov, Braden Point, Stamkos, Hedman. The reality is that the Habs don't have these players. I referenced Toronto. We don't have a Marner or a Matthews or a Tavares or a Morgan Riley at the point. And even Boston, we don't have a Marchand, a Pasternak, and a Torrey Krug. I guess he's with St. Louis now, but he's a great power play quarterback. We don't have these type of players. But so part of this is also on Bergevin. We're not going to really talk about Bergevin much right here because we're just talking about Julien and the Habs. But Bergevin is to blame. The personnel that the Habs have, that's his decision. Now, does he have influence from the coach? I think he does, absolutely. And there's been multiple points where I think you could see that Julien probably asked Bergevin about certain type of players. But for the most part, when we got Drouin, part of the reason we got Drouin was because he was going to be a power play dynamo, right? Stick handling, he's going to have room on the power play. He's got a good wrist shot. He's got good vision. He's got good passes. And then we, team him up with Weber. It's going to be a really great, system. And it never came to fruition, Now you see we got guys like Toffoli and Suzuki and guys who can shoot and pass. And, look, I'm not saying these guys are superstars. They're not. They're not on the level of Pasternak and Matthews and Stamkos. They're not. But these are good players. You should be able to develop a system that, is better than the 26th ranked power play over that time frame, at least over the last year or so. And that's where my struggles have come with Bergevin. It's his lack of ability to adjust or his unwillingness to adjust, maybe because of his belief in his system or maybe he has too much belief in his players. But there's a large enough sample size to say that it's the system. And I don't know what you think about that when it comes to the power play and whatnot. And I don't know how much of it was Mueller and how much of it was Julien. But Julien is the head coach. So no matter what, it should be his final decision. And I never saw him making any changes.
Yeah, it seemed like it stopped. It just there was one point where it got to its peak in his mind, and then it was all give up. And like you said, those numbers are just, for lack of a better term, atrocious. To see 26 on the power play and 9th on the penalty kill. You say out of 31 teams. Remember, just a few years ago, when he first started coaching the Habs in the second go-round, there was no Vegas. So there's only 30 teams. That means he's either dead to last or the second to last place in the entire league. The system that they have, like you said, is inconsistent. That is the biggest word I can use to describe them as of late. You have games in the beginning of the year, I know you tweeted about it. I know I wrote it about it. We started the season, the Montreal Canadiens did, with one regulation in their first loss in their first 10 games. They were 7-1-2. Everyone was turning heads, oh my God, Bergevin is a genius. Claude Julien is coaching his team to perfection. And don't get me wrong, I'm very pleased with the acquisitions we've made. We did some huge moves, and I think they were good. I'm not going to say they were great, but for the team caliber and the fact that we cannot, it's hard to land a superstar in Montreal unless he's a Québécois. To manage to get these players such as Toffoli, like you mentioned, or Anderson, even Edmonton on the back end, Allen between the pipes as a backup, they were able to get something going. They were something like a force to be reckoned with, which turned heads, which made people think, are they the real deal? Is this their year? And then all the analysts said, oh yeah, no, I had predicted Montreal going far, number one in this division.
Well, a lot of analysts did. Some of the old school analysts did. A lot of the statistically driven analysts out there, the analytic guys, they didn't have Montreal going first. Everyone had Toronto winning by a mile. I had Toronto winning by a mile. I do skew to the analytical side. But I thought Montreal would finish second, somewhere second, third, depending on, I didn't see much of a huge gap between Montreal and then you had Edmonton and Winnipeg, there as well. And, the thing about Edmonton is they have amazing special teams, right? Because they have McDavid and Draisaitl. And I think their power play was 30% last year, which is an insane number, right?
Yep.
And one thing Winnipeg has is the best goalie in the league. Hellebuyck was the best goalie in the league last year. He's been one of the top 3, maybe 4 goalies in the league for the last few years. Once again, this year, he's proven to be one of the top goalies in the league. The Habs don't have that. I'm sorry. They don't. I love Carrie Price. I really, really do. At one point, there wasn't a shadow of a doubt that he was the best goalie in the league. But you know what? He's not anymore, or he hasn't played like it. And so I knew it would be a dogfight. But you're right; those acquisitions were great. People talk about Edmondson. I don't mind Edmondson. The reason why I didn't like Edmondson signing was the Habs have Weber and they have Sherrod, and those guys play the same style of Edmondson in the defensive zone. Okay, Weber's not going anywhere. Okay, he's the captain. He's still a positive player. He still drives offense. He's still a weapon. He's still going to score 10 to 12 goals a year easily with that slap shot. I mean, you saw him yesterday, the one that he ripped. I mean, I didn't see it, you know. But then Edmondson and Sherrod. I know Sherrod's played well for the Habs, and I'm a fan of his. But to have 3 of those type of players in your top 4. Just look around the league. Look at the best teams in the league. It's not a formula for success. And this is where I think Julien might have had some influence on Bergevin. I go back to the year that he joined the Habs. It was 2017, right? 2016, 2017. At the deadline then, I don't know if you remember, the Habs needed offense. What did they go out and get? They went out and got Dwight King, Steve Ott, and Andreas Martinson.
Yep.
Big thumper, like playoff, grind guys, and the Habs lost in the first round where they scored, I think, 7 goals in 6 games. So, and that was, to me, again, that was Julien, because that's how he won with Boston. That's how he won with Boston. But the league now is not the same as it was in the early 10s. In whenever I think he was there from 09, 10, 11, he won the cup, went to a finals. No doubt he had success with the Bruins. But I think this is where Julien, again, the game sort of passed him by in certain elements, is that he had too much of an affinity for the stay-at-home defenseman, the bottom 6 type player, and you need guys like that to win, but you cannot build the identity of the team around that. You just can't. Look at the teams that have won. You need a star. You need offense. You need something. I mean, St. Louis is maybe the closest thing to a team that's won without a superstar in recent years. But Peter Angelo was maybe the best defense in the league that year. I mean, and O'Reilly had 75 points, and he was a two-way force. I mean, I'm sorry, the Habs don't have that either. Yep. They don't even have that, right? So again, I just believe that that's the way the league is going, and I think Julien just didn't catch up at that point. Like 5-on-5, his system is great. Just he didn't catch up.
Yeah, no, he was behind. Unfortunately, it caught up to him in the end. I mean, like you said, there's some players that of superstar caliber that we don't have. We don't have the fortune to really depend on that playmaking of that system to work for us, because we don't have it. And that's unfortunately something that we're missing. Now with bringing in Dominique Ducharme as interim head coach, I think that's a huge positive for the team. I mean, he's a proven winner in the past. He's won for Team Canada. He's won in the QMJHL. He's won for the Mooseheads. He's won for the Tigers. And he's won for the Voltigeurs. He's a guy who has a pretty damn good resume, if I do say so myself.
Yeah,
who's never been a head coach. That's one thing.
Right.
That's also interesting.
Listen, we know the politics that are in play in Montreal. We know that the coach has to speak French. We get it. But this recycling of coaches, Terrien, Julien, I was convinced if Alain Vigneault was available, he'd be the coach of the Habs right now. But I think Ducharme, yes, he's French speaking, but I think he's cut his teeth pretty well in the minor, in the juniors, and then with Team Canada. He didn't come up through the AHL, but I think he was put there for a reason as the assistant coach. I think he was always the plan, maybe, to be the successor. Now, by all accounts, I saw a tweet that apparently Chantal Maccabee had mentioned on 919 Sports that this more open, free-flowing offense that they were playing at the beginning of the year was Ducharme's idea. And listen, I don't know if these things are true or whatnot, but at the very least, it's a younger philosophy. It's a guy who hasn't coached in the league. Maybe it puts the veterans on alert a little bit, because there's no more old boys network. Julien might have catered a little bit, Maybe he catered a little bit more to the veterans. There's always been rumors since he was going back to Boston that he's not good with young players. Ducharme coached the juniors.
Mm-hmm.
He coached the Canadian junior team. So I'm looking for some positives here. I don't think Ducharme's coming in as a savior. I don't think the Habs are going to flip into a contender overnight. I don't think they're going to catch Toronto for first place. But if he can just hold the fort on 5-on-5, maybe give a little bit extra time to the players who deserve it. Bench some veterans if you have to, and just take control of the team. But 5-on-5, the Habs are not bad. But if he could just marginally improve the special team, even if you just took them from the bottom of the league to the middle pack, they probably make the playoffs. They probably made the playoffs. They would have made the playoffs last year. They probably make the playoffs the year before, where they only missed by a point, or I think 2 points. Yeah. So I think this is his MO. This is what he needs to do. And if he does it, he'll probably be the coach next year.
Yeah. I mean, like you said, one thing that he has is his youth. Like there's the con that he has experience at the NHL level, but there's definitely the pro that he understands the game better with a younger system of play. He knows how to coach the players. He's more relatable in the sense, there's a 13-year difference between Ducharme and Claude Julien in age. Like Ducharme is 47, Julien is 60. Not that numbers play a real big role in that sense, but it does in the sense when you want to take someone in confidence. It's unfortunate to see because like our penalty kill has been so woeful. We cannot kill a penalty for the life of us. There is the positive that we can look at is that we've been succeeding at the penalty kill in the sense we scored 7 shorthanded goals. But this is this is something that I'm sure will maybe get you riled up. But the fact is that the last 2 games, they scratched their best penalty killer, Arturo Lehkonen.
Yeah, you know me. I'm a huge Lehkonen fan, and analytics don't necessarily bear out that he's the best penalty killer, but he is one of their best defensive forwards, 5-on-5, and he could be an effective penalty killer. His instincts are there. I think it's a system issue. I really do. I think it's a system issue with the power play, and I think it's a system issue with the penalty kill because the Habs have. You can argue that they don't have great offensive players that you can throw in the power play. I'm fine with that. But you can't argue that they don't have good defensive players because 5-on-5 they have great defensive players with the right type of instincts. Why are they not good penalty killers? Is it simply that the goalies let in bad goals during the power play? I don't know if it's that simple. I think there was a need for a change. That's how I feel about it. And before we got on, I was telling you, I went back the 2 years, the 2.5, like he got fired halfway through the 2016-2017 season. And I looked at the 2 years prior, and the Bruins were a middle of the pack penalty killing team. Anywhere between, 11 to 15 and kind of bounced around between there. Weren't great, weren't this bad, but weren't great. The year after he left, they were still in the same position. And then last year or the year before, they were one of the top 5 teams in penalty killing. And their power play, which was always kind of top 10, even when Julien was around. Again, they had some of the right pieces, became lethal after Julien left. And you can argue that Pasternak started to find himself and Marchand became an even better player than he was starting to develop. But again, Julien had to leave for some of these things to happen. Would Julien have played McAvoy the way Cassidy played him right away? I don't know. But, Romanov looks lost out there. Maybe he should have spent some time in Laval, but I don't think Julien is also the right coach to bring in a young defenseman to play in right away either. It's just these are some of the things that I think probably needed to change. I don't think Julien is inherently a bad coach. I really don't. In fact, I think he's a good coach. I just think that there were some things systematically, but also in terms of generational understanding of how to motivate younger players that maybe passed him by. And I think it was the right move for the Habs. And again, I don't think this turns them into a contender overnight, but they should improve. They should improve, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think it's a giant wake-up call to the team itself. It's a team that we know that they're capable of doing well. They are on paper, they look like they're a team that can definitely contend, if they put their cylinders working. Right now, this is going to be the wake-up call that they need. Like you said also, that Julien is a good coach. He is a very good coach. He has a great resume. He's got, great years with the Canadiens. Unfortunately, sometimes we've been dealt a poor hand. It's not to say that this is going to be, like, the saving grace is Dominique Ducharme. But hey, this is a time that we'll see what he can do. I definitely agree with the fact that you said, is Ducharme the type of coach that will let his younger players play as opposed to Julien's system, which would just throw them into the lineup? Yeah, I mean, that's definitely something that's going to be an advantage. It's just unfortunate sometimes for the D having that revolving door of defensemen that are in, out, and you're not even sure but until like 6:59 on a 7 p.m. game who's in, who's not. It's between Mete and Kulak and Romanov. Like,
One thing I wanted to note, and I wrote up a thread on Twitter, and I don't know if you saw it, but this is a controversial topic because goaltending is an incredibly unpredictable and roller coaster type of position, right? When you look at it analytically, especially. But one thing is, Julien, he had Tim Thomas early on, and Tim Thomas put up great numbers across the board up until 2012, 2013. I think he left that strike shortened year. And then Rask took the net, and Rask was good. He was good. He wasn't putting up some of the gaudy numbers that Thomas put up, but he was good. And if you look at analytics, one of the things you look at analytics is goals saved above expected, right? Goals, and then there's goals saved above average. And evolvinghockey.com has all this stuff laid out. And so I looked at Rask, and in 2014, 2015, which is the year that 2 years before he got let go, he was great. He had an amazing year. I mean, maybe, you can argue that, that was maybe the year that he did the best after. Well, actually, no, that's when his numbers start to slump comparatively to the years before. Sorry, that was Carrie Price's God year, 2014, 2015, right? That's when he won the Hart, everything, and he deserved all of it in terms of the numbers. He was clearly the best goalie in the league that year. Whereas Rask started to recede that year. And it was after this year, it was after 2015. If you look at save percentages in the league after 2015, they dip. They dip. The average save percentage went from 915 to 910. So ways to look at goalies changed. But here's the thing. Rask then had a really bad year, 2015, 2016. And 2016, 2017, he was having a bad year, and Julien got fired. And then the next year, he was still kind of flat, and then he recovered, man. He became, he had a positive goal saved above average. And then in 2019-2020, he was a Vezina Trophy candidate, And again, goaltending goes up and down. But for the most part, he became consistently good again. Good to shades of great. Now, Carrie Price, we know Carrie Price. 2014, 2015, he was God year. 2013, 2014, he was great. Then he comes 2015, 2016, he had hurt his knee in the playoffs the year before. He came in, he dominated for 10 games. I think the Habs went like 10-1 or something stupid. And then he was out for the season. But he was great in those 10 games. And he was out for the season, and then the Habs completely collapsed that year. He comes back in 2016, 2017, starts out the year great again. He's on fire. He's the same Carey Price. No ill effects, right? Then the whole team slumps in January. They roll into February. They fire Terrien. Price slumps as well. Julien comes in, and everything seems to have stabilized. And Price finishes 2016, 2017 with some good numbers again. Double digits above expected, double digits above average. Then it's like he's a different player after Julien.
Yeah, I mean,
I know they had personnel issues, but we're looking at basically 6 years now of Julien, right? Going back to 2014, 2015, where his goalies, who were previously good to great, fell off a cliff, especially Price. And I know there's other factors involved, personnel. And, 2018, 2019, Price and the Habs had a nice run there to finish just outside of the playoffs. But a trend is a trend, man. And, if you really look at it, none of his teams have made the playoffs. He took over Terrien halfway, and they made the playoffs that year. But if you remove that, Julien coach teams haven't made the playoffs in 6 years.
Mm-hmm.
These are facts. You can't deny them. And I know there's a lot of factors that go into a goaltender's play. There's a lot of factors that go into organizational play. Bergevin didn't do him any favors, that first year, signing Alzner, trading Sergachev for Drouin, losing Radulov, losing Markov. I mean, that year was a mess. Weber got hurt. Price was bad. He was playing hurt. It's just there's other factors. I'm not just blaming Julien, but a trend is a trend is a trend, man. And if anything, that alone warrants a change. And that's the last I'll say on it because I've been yapping for too long, and I apologize.
You're allowed to yap, man. This is
I had all this, guys. Just so you know, like I texted Davey this morning, and I was like, "Yo, we should do a hit today because I need to get this stuff off my chest."
But I'm glad we did. Honestly, I mean, like I think this is, if also a person's perspective, it puts Bergevin on the hot seat as it has been for the past few years.
100%.
But like it's a wake up call to him that Molson is looking at you guys and saying, I'm watching you. Like, I'm not just saying, like, I'm not going to let you run and just, like, do whatever you want. Do we have one of the best goalies in the league? We did. Unfortunately, right now, like you said, he's slumping. And he needs a wake-up call, too. I mean, it's nice to know that we actually have a backup we can depend on, so to speak.
Finally, and they should play him. If he's playing well, play him. Anyway.
Yeah, the game the other day against Ottawa, I mean, they lost in overtime, but the only game, like, the goals that beat him in regulation were bad bounces that flew up in the air.
He got to have the point that game, in my opinion.
Absolutely. I mean, absolutely. It's unfortunate that we're saying that we're like playing contending games against the Ottawa Senators. The Ottawa Senators have played 6 games this year and have played, I think, 19 games. They've won 6, and 3 of those 6 were against Montreal. Three.
Listen, I think Ottawa's one of those teams that I expected to improve throughout the year because they were so young. But if you look at their roster, they have some really good young players who are going to get, like, they just are. Ottawa's going to be good. Like, it might take a couple years, but they're going to be good.
Yeah.
That said, the Habs shouldn't be struggling this much with them. It was one thing in that first game to struggle. Maybe the 1-2-2 that they play caused some problems. But again, why was there no adjustment?
Yeah, it was invisible. You did not see it. It was nowhere to be found.
I come back to that. And let me ask you a question, Davey. Sure. Do you think now, since you brought up Bergevin, let's just say the Habs don't get any better, okay? They marginally improve and they stay in the playoff race and they make the playoffs and they lose in the first round, okay? Good playoff series. They lose in, I'm not even saying they get blown out. They lose in 5, 6, or 7 games, but they lose, is my point. Because I think we would agree that if the Habs flame out and don't make the playoffs, Bergevin is fired.
100%.
But my question to you is, let's just say they do make the playoffs, but they still go out in the first round. Is Bergevin still fired?
Yes.
I agree.
Yeah. I mean, like, right now...
I think they need a significant playoff run.
Yes. I mean, like, he's been with the team since 2012. He has made some great moves. He has made some... Like you said, Dwight King... Okay, like, whatever. Like, these are things that we didn't need. We don't. He says we needed the leadership in terms of a cup winner. You don't go out and get Dwight King. What he did this past summer.
I think that was all Julien, but I agree.
No, but I mean, and then this year you said we got a cup winner, but we did. We got Toffoli, who's a cup winner. We got Edmondson, who's a cup winner. We got Perry, who's a cup winner. This was good moves. These were solid moves, and bringing in people that actually have good resumes. So, yeah, no, I think that Bergevin is definitely on the hot seat. And I think that if they make the playoffs, fantastic. If they don't make it past the first round, I think he's out. I think he's worn out his welcome. I think right now he's on the hot seat to say, you have to perform. Your job depends on it. That's my take. And I think you agree, right? I mean,
I do agree. And I mean, I don't know what's going to happen. I mean, just to wrap this up, I am curious about some predictions here. I'll ask you before I give one. So it's starting tomorrow is a new era, right? Yes. New era, new coach, and for the first time in years, it's a coach that hasn't coached before.
Yeah.
So really, we're looking at a significantly new era because Therrien and Julien, they have different systems, but they both cut their teeth in the Montreal organization. They both came from the same place. They were both, rugged defensemen. Like, they're very similar, in a lot of ways. They are. And Ducharme's coming in. He's a bit more new school. You can see he's a little bit more offensive in his coaching slant. What do you predict from, the Habs are still, by the way, the Habs are still in a good position to control their own destiny, to make the playoffs. So I think if you look at it by point percentage, they're still over 60%. They don't play the Leafs till later in the season, who's really the team that I think should and would give them the most problems. They should be able to compete with every other team in that division and beat some of those other teams pretty easily. What do you think is going to happen between now and the end of the season? Where do you think Montreal is going to finish? And do they turn it around, or do they sort of limp to the finish line in and out of the playoffs?
I think they're going to be a bit more consistent. Hopefully, that's my fingers crossed moment. But if we're going to go based on the numbers, I think on the North Division, I think they'll finish. If we're going to go with exact numbers, third. I think that Toronto will take it handedly, like we both agree. Like, I mean, they are destroying the league right now. They're destroying not only the North Division but the league, which is something that like Leaf fans have been hoping for many.
Well, they're not playing the rest of the league, so they're putting up good numbers relative to the league, but they're not playing Tampa and Boston and all these guys.
True.
They're destroying the North. I'll give you that.
Yes, but I think they will top the North Division handedly. I think Edmonton will actually do better. Because since then, for them, they had the opposite idea of Montreal. They started off slumping. Their first 2 games against the Habs, they only scored 2 goals, or outscored 8-2. Koskinen looked weak. McDavid seemed like he wasn't fully invested. Draisaitl was not there yet. Nuge was not there as well. But then they woke, and now they are just tearing it up. I mean, yesterday is a classic example. They were down 3-0 to the Canucks. I mean, yes, it's the Canucks, but still they're down 3-0. They came back and won 4-3.
By the way, the Canucks are the other reason the Montreal expectations got blown out of the water. A lot of teams knew the Canucks probably wouldn't be as good as they were last year, where they weren't even that good. They were kind of carried a little bit by Markstrom and then some great offensive production from the Elias-Peterson line. Mm-hmm. But they might be Ottawa might be better than Vancouver by the end of the year, because Vancouver is really bad. Montreal demolishing Vancouver. I guess the media and a lot of fans did not yet know that Vancouver was god awful, and so when the Montreal sort of steamrolled them, people were like, "Oh man, Montreal must be really good." Well, I don't think it was that. I think Montreal is good. I think they're better than what they've shown, but beating the Canucks is basically proven to be easy for everybody. So, kind of set the expectation level maybe too high. Not to say they should be slumping the way they are now, because like you said, they've lost a few games to Ottawa, and they put up a couple of stinkers too in between there to I think Edmonton and Toronto. So, yeah.
Yeah, but, I mean, and I think it gave Montreal players as well as fans a lot of cockiness, so to speak. Because we like you said, we didn't know how good or bad Vancouver was going to be. I mean, they brought in Holtby. They're like, oh my god, they got rid of Markstrom. Oh crap! But hold the phone, we got Holtby, and then Holtby this year has been terrible. Terrible.
We talked about him in the last podcast. He hasn't been good for a little while.
No, so at that point, I mean, you look at it in that way, and then it gave them the confidence of them saying like, oh well, we can put up 5, 6, 7 goals a night, and we're gonna steamroll through this division. But that was only against Vancouver. They put up a few 5-goal games against one 5-goal game against Edmonton, no 5-goal games against Calgary, nothing against Winnipeg,
but 5-goal games, like we both know, like that's not a legitimate strategy. You're not going to score 5 goals a game. It's not 1984. But so I think people understood that they were going to regress. But the thing is that like, even though they steamrolled Vancouver, like I thought they played pretty well game 1 against Toronto. Again, they gave up power play goals. Kind of, they played good games against Calgary. They played good games against Edmonton early on. It appeared to be once they hit that Ottawa game, Ottawa figured out a way to trap them. And even though they outplayed Ottawa in that game they lost, the first game they lost to Ottawa, they outplayed them. Ottawa won, and it kind of deflated the Habs. And then even though they won the next game because Jake Allen played great, they didn't play great. And it snowballed since then. And I don't, again, we hear about the Habs leadership. Weber's such a great leader, and Carrie Price is so respected, and Gallagher lead. Like, where are they? That's why I kept thinking, I was like, Julien if he lost the leaders, then he lost the room. And that's maybe something else that happened. I mean, I don't like to speculate because we're not in the room.
We're not in the room. We don't know. But, I mean, it's something definitely to think about. Like you said, there's some leaders that we brought in, or some leaders that we've had prior that you really just wonder, like, where are they? You know, you have Drouin, who has 2 goals this year. I mean, he's good at playmaking, but like he's also.
You know what's interesting? Ducharme coached Drouin, right?
Yeah, for the Mooseheads back in the day.
Mooseheads. So I don't know. Maybe he could figure out a way to unlock. Drouin is what he is. Like he's not going to be a superstar. But if you can get some solid offensive production, and if you can maybe open him up on the power play somehow, that's where he can help you. It's frustrating. But my prediction is I do think Ducharme is going to change the culture a little bit. I hope he doesn't mess with it too much 5-on-5. I'd like to see him play Kotkaniemi with some better wingers, just so that we can start. I know Kotkaniemi is only 20 still, and he's still one of the youngest players in the league. But I'd like to see him play with Gallagher or Toffoli or Drouin or one of the top 6 guys, because they need at some point they need to determine whether or not he has top 2C potential. And he's shown flashes, but he's struggled. So I hope he does stuff like that. But if I do think he'll help unlock the power play a little bit. I do hope the penalty kill. And the other thing is, like, I hope Price has a Rask-like rebound post Julien, because to me there must be some sort of flaw or hole in Julien's defensive system, whether it's too much reliance on stay-at-home defensemen or defensemen who can't clear the puck out of the zone or carry it out of the zone, or whether there's an actual flaw in the strategy. I just don't know enough about hockey to sit here and tell you. It just is odd that both Rask and Price would just fall off a cliff. Like, you'd expect some decline as the league changed and as the players got older. But it was like it almost doesn't make sense, And I'm not saying Price is going to turn into 2014, 2015 Price. They don't need that. But again, very similar to the power play and the penalty killing, what we mentioned earlier. If Price and Allen can just be a little bit above average and the power play and penalty killing come up, then the Habs, to me, are clearly the second best team in that division. And they would give Toronto some problems, if they can get to that point. They just have to, and it's a massive leap. So maybe tackle one thing at a time. But I do think the Habs will make the playoffs. I don't see them going far in the playoffs unless they get some crazy goaltending or there's a big move made or something on a trade or whatnot. But I don't see, people are like, oh, well, remember when St. Louis fired their coach and they went to the Stanley Cup, and watch when got Cassidy in there. That's when they turned the franchise around. I don't think we'll see a franchise type of a change in this case. I think the Habs have some issues they need to address, though, and hopefully they will.
Well, changes are coming. It's a new chapter. We're going to see what happens. First game tomorrow night, Thursday. They're going to take on the Jets. First game against Winnipeg. So should be interesting. Anyways, guys, I mean, like, we'd love to know what you guys think. These are just our hot takes, our rants, so to speak. We want to know what you guys think. We want to know what you guys think about us. And, thanks for taking the time to listen. So anyways, I want to thank Z for joining me today for this afternoon.
Davey, thank you for giving me a forum to I'm much more calm now. If you caught me earlier today, I would have probably thrown half the things in this room. My kids would have yelled at me, but
I was just trying to sleep, and I was like, no.
Thank you for letting me rant and rave.
Exactly. Too many things going on. I was like, no, I want to sleep. Can't sleep. But anyways, so guys, without further ado, he's Z. I'm Landsman. This is Shooting the Shit. Thank you guys for tuning in. And until the next time, stay safe.
Cheers, guys.
There.